Hello and good morning, evening or afternoon, depending on when you are streaming this, the latest episode of Edie's Susty Talk. Launched during 2020, Susty Talk is our series of video interviews with sustainability leaders designed to keep you feeling connected during lockdown and beyond. I'm delighted to have Dave Muenz from Kao Corporation on the call today, dialing in all the way from America, I believe. He is the corporation's Senior Vice President for ESG. Thank you so much for your time, David. How are you?
I'm doing well, Sarah. How are you doing?
Yes, not too bad. Nice spring day and in the middle of our circular economy week. So very busy, but also very energized and inspired. I'm glad to have you taking part in it.
Glad to be here.
Great. And I think it's the first time we've interviewed. So it'd be great to hear a little bit more about your role and remit at Kao.
Okay, sure. So, Kao actually is a very old company. We were established back in the late 1880s. And all the way from the very beginning, sustainability has sort of been part of the ethos, the philosophy of the company. You can see this from the writings of our founder and what his intentions were in terms of serving society, to provide our first product was a face soap product, but to provide that to really elevate everybody within society. So this sort of idea of business with a purpose has always been part of who we are, and that really cascaded down through the years, and sustainability was always a big part of Kao's philosophy and really embedded in everything that we had done. But around the late 2010s, with all of the things that were happening around us, the crises that we see from an environmental or social point of view, our management felt that we needed to really elevate the importance of this area within Kao. So we've already had a sustainability department, but they wanted to create a larger organization, a division level organization that would report directly to the CEO and some other structure inside of the company to, again, just really elevate the importance and role of ESG within the company. So we created this ESG division in mid 2018. That's when I took this new role at that time. And we decided to call it ESG versus sustainability, mainly because I think sustainability had become a little pigeonholed as just environmental focus. And we really wanted to broaden that to say, we wanted to consider the issues around social problems that we're engaged in, and our role in helping society from that point of view, as well as the environmental. And then governance as well is such a critical component about trust with people and with other stakeholders, how we conduct our business and how we manage ourselves from an integrity point of view. So that's why we chose ESG instead of sustainability, to sort of signal that broadening of our view and of these different issues within the company. Mm-hmm. We also established the ESG committee, which is chaired by our CEO. And that is at the very highest level from a corporate governance perspective in our company. It reports directly to the board of directors. And so the level of issues and visibility that we get within the company was elevated as well, so that it really became sort of top priority for the company. So I lead our ESG division. Many of those people are in Tokyo, but we also have some people around the world as well that are either directly reporting into us or associated with the businesses there as well, which we collaborate with. So it's been a couple of years now, almost 2.5 years, and it's an intense area. Kao's really committed to it. It's our CEO talks about it as being at the center of our business all of the time now, and so really I see a lot of momentum change and a real gathering of will to make a difference in the company. So it's been great.
I definitely see that more broadly with some of the other companies we talk about too. So it's really interesting to hear that as a specific case study. And for our Circular Economy Week, we're here today to talk about probably one of the most hotly discussed issues that covers the E, the S, and the G in ESG, which is plastics and materials. So I was taking a look through commitments and strategies in this area, and one of the overarching commitments is to achieve full recyclability by 2025. So it'd be good to hear about what progress is looking like to date, and what's going to be going on in the near future here.
Okay. Well, I think we're making great progress in terms of having our packaging designed to be recyclable. We're actually almost there in terms of achieving that goal. But I think it's important for us to sort of maybe differentiate between designing something to be recyclable and then its actual recyclability in communities around the world, right? So I think unfortunately many people don't consider that full spectrum. They just sort of stop at this point to saying, well, we designed this package to be recyclable, so that's the end of our job. Whereas, if you really look at it, how recyclable is it, given the infrastructure that exists, the habit structure that exists in all of the communities around the world? We're not really going to make a big difference on our goals to become more circular and to address plastic waste until we think about that as well. So we do a lot to try to address those areas in addition to designing everything to be recyclable. We in Tokyo or in Japan, we're actually working sort of horizontally across the business structure even with our large competitors. We have a competitor by the name of Lion, which is pretty much one of our most significant competitors in the sort of the fabric care and hygiene areas in Japan. We've agreed to work together to help facilitate the collection of thin film packages and then the recycling of those into usable material going forward. So we actually have reached out and established these types of relationships to encourage that. We're working with our, big retailers to actually collect these thin films. We have partnered with TerraCycle. You may know TerraCycle in terms of their role that they've been playing around the world. So they've worked with us for many years now to help find a pathway for recycling of these thin film packages. So it's really, this collaborative effort that we think is necessary. Sort of extending that further, this idea of recycling these thin film packages, we've established really some interesting systems in about 6 or 7 communities within Japan, where we work with NGOs in the communities and with the people to really change that behavior, right? To move beyond just collecting, say, PET, and really having more divisions of collections available so that we start to address things like thin films and get those collected and used. And the cool thing about doing these community efforts is that you really, there's an education process too, right? And also just a really an internal pride that the community gets by actually seeing, we did this, we collected all these thin films, and then here's the output. Just for demonstration purposes, we have this program we talk about is called Recycreation. And this is the program that we've put in these 6 communities. But as an output of that, we have these thin films turned into sort of building blocks, just so we can put them in the town square and make something that's relevant to the community, so they can say, okay, there's what the effort did, right? It went from thin films, we worked to collect them, and here's the output of it, something usable for us. So just, again, it drives this mindset change into people as well. So I think it's important to work that full cycle, right? How do you recycle something, the mindset, working with partners and with communities to make this happen.
And you touched there on something really important, the fact that behavior and infrastructure has to go along with design. And we are based in the UK. We know a lot about recycling behaviours here and about infrastructure systems, recycling rates there. And I think you touched on some of it there, but could you tell us a bit more about the state of play in Japan?
Well, we're very fortunate in Japan, actually. I think the awareness and conscientiousness of people in Japan around recycling is very good, right? So there's a real mindset of maintaining the environment. You know, we named our sustainability plan the Kire lifestyle plan, and that word Kire is something that's very close to Kao. It means clean and well ordered and healthy, not just on the outside but on the inside as well. So it's important. This idea of Kire is something that's very important for us, but also the Japanese culture. So people are mindful of taking care of the environment around them. So you look at, for instance, PET recycling rates in Japan. That's phenomenal. It's over 85% in terms of the loop of PET within the country. You know, that compares to, you know, in the 40s or high 30s in Europe, and much lower than that in the US. So there's been a really great performance in Japan around PET. And that really was done because the industry got together and they decided to standardize certain designs of bottles and other parameters that allowed that to happen. And then the consumers also picked up on that and worked very hard to drive that, to close that loop, right, and to make that happen. So I think that's, you know, we're in a pretty good state in Japan from a recycling habit and structure amongst our consumers. Now, on the infrastructure side, actually, is, you know, contrasting to that great performance, our infrastructure in Japan is very fragmented from a recycler's point of view. It's very local, very fragmented. So we don't have these big behemoth recycling companies that you might find in Europe or in the US. It's much more fragmented and split up than that in Japan, which does pose some challenges for the future. You know, as technology evolves and we're trying to do things beyond PET into other structures, we have a lot of those barriers to try to get that done quickly throughout the country as well. But overall, I think it's in pretty good shape from a recycling awareness and behavior point of view.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that overview. And we've discussed recycling there in quite a lot of depth. So I want to come on to the other R's that I know that yourselves and a lot of companies are using in plastics and materials strategies. So replacement, reduction, and reuse. And I've got sent some great information about changes and innovation here, but I'd love for you to sum that up for our audience.
Sure. Well, I do think it's critically important to sort of think beyond just recycling, right? And in particular, Kao has been dedicated for literally decades to the reduction side of this equation and really trying to find unique ways to reduce the amount of plastic that is used in packaging, the amount of paper that's used in packaging. They've done that through concentration of products on certain aspects, but also on creation of very unique packages. So in Japan, we have a lot of these sort of very thin film packages, right? So that we use for mostly refill packages in Japan. And remarkably, since the beginning of this sort of trend of refills back in the 1990s, we've seen an amazing conversion in the Japanese marketplace to refill packages on the order of, in say household or in some of the personal care areas, up to 80% of all the packages purchased in those categories are refills. And that is an amazing change in behavior, and the knock-on effect of that is that we've been able to reduce the amount of plastic used, the total tonnage of plastic used, by almost 75%. Can you imagine that? 75% less plastic used versus a do-nothing scenario because of that change in refills and refill behavior and going to these thin films. That's something on the order of 90,000 tons of plastic just from cows products, not even thinking about the rest of the competition in the category.
Is that just Japan as well, or is that a global figure? Sorry, Dave.
That's Japan. And that's where the opportunity lies, I think, Sarah, is that, we've demonstrated in Japan that this is possible. We can do it. Consumers will make the change. It took a while, but they will make that change. Those, the comparable numbers in Europe or in the U.S. are far, far lower in terms of the conversion to these refill packages. So that's the big opportunity, I think, in terms of this sort of reduction side of the equation on plastic packaging. And it's a challenge that the refill, the acceptance of refill behavior in Europe and in the U.S. is very low. And we just haven't made the conversion, right? I tried to introduce a product in the U.S., a refill product back in the 1990s, and it failed within 6 months because the consumers just weren't willing to do it, right? They just would rather buy the full-size package. So we need to find a way to really, close that gap. And when you talk to people about something like refills, oh yeah, there's high intention to do it, but in the end, that they don't really adopt the behavior. So how do we close that gap between intention and actual behavior on something like this? And so, we take that as sort of our job. Part of our sustainability strategy that, when we made this new strategy, was to shift the focus of what are we doing to make ourselves more sustainable to what are we doing to help people live more sustainably. Mm-hmm. And so the job is ours to figure that out from a design point of view. And my philosophy and our philosophy of our company is to really make that conversion, that behavior change for people as easy as possible, right? Because people have trouble, making behavior changes in their life, whether it's on the healthcare side or in areas like this, in terms of sustainable behavior. So we're striving to make that change as easy as possible. So we have different innovations that we're working on now where, these refill packs, which I shared with you, it looks something like this, right? But it's a refill. So you use it, you fill up the old bottle, and then you dispose of that. We're working on new things where we call this our smart holder, which is a dispenser that's permanent, and then you just use this refill pack, and it slides right in to this package and becomes the principal package that you can use on your vanity or whatever. But it allows that what was a refill pack to become a permanent package. That means that the consumer doesn't have to refill a package. And that makes it easier, right, for them to use. And then we have one last thing, we're a new innovation we're working on, which we call this air and film bottle, which again starts from these super thin films, and then we structure it and fill this structure with air so that it has some rigidity to it, so you can pump with it and so forth. And it basically holds this shape all the way through usage. So again, you get all the benefits of that plastic weight reduction without having any, real behavior requirements or behavior change requirements for the consumer. So this is the kind of mindset that we're working on. But the accomplishment in Japan around these thin films, and Kao was the leader of this, but the whole industry changed. So that 80% number is everybody, the whole market, not just Kao. So it's a tremendous accomplishment, and I think reduction really needs to play a super big role in the way we approach this from a circular point of view. It's great to focus on recyclability, but reducing the amount of material that goes into the system has a tremendously positive effect. If you look at it from a CO2 life cycle perspective, that has a big change on the total footprint of the whole industry if we're able to reduce those amounts dramatically.
Great. I think it's definitely becoming obvious with refill and reduction that it is about very specific thoughts about the system. So I was talking to Walgreens Boots recently, and they were talking about how, yes, on-shelf packs that can be refilled at home or even direct to consumer would be great, but in-store refills not right now. And I know that Kao's also looking at direct to consumer here in the UK with Loop. Is that right?
Yes, we are, and you know, I think it's important to explore and experiment with all of these different solutions. Loop is a great example of that, where we're reusing more permanent type of packaging that goes through that whole process back to the manufacturer and then back to the consumer. You know, I don't think there's going to be any single solution that will really enable us to achieve the goals that we're after from a total global point of view. So I think it's important to try all of these different things. I do think, as you said, in-store refilling, you know, I don't think most consumers around the world are not ready for that at this point. I know many companies are experimenting with it, and I think it's good to try and see what would work. Again, in that spirit of no single solution is going to make it all work. So I think, you know, trying different vectors like this is important for us as a society and as an industry.
Great. Well, Dave, I think that's a great point to end on, and that's all the questions we have time for today. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you. It was really great to talk with you.
Great. I'll pause the recording then.